Chapter 10, Episode 4. The normal Sunday lunch at the Prescotts was not an event where guests could be invited to participate. From a non-Anthropophagus point of view, it was a horror journey. Non-Anthropophagi had their vague moral codes and grand ability of denial. Most carnivores didn't eat their own species, but that did not make them less brutal. Intent, as far as any given animal might have such ability, was always the same: catch, kill, eat. There was no room for morals, thus there were none. Humans played at morals. At any given time and any given land, there could be endless variations on many different constructs. The Hebrews were most famous for putting together a book of fables and laws. It gave them moral authority to murder their own species. They didn't eat the meat, left it for wild canine and vultures, but the enemies they chose, their victims, were just as dead. Random moral justification for same species killing. It did not levitate Homo sapiens above any other creature. It distanced them from understanding the result of their actions. Sarah had no illusions that eating the meat of a victim made killing more moral. It was the acceptance of one's nature, the disregard for moral amusement. I eat meat, therefore I kill. Sarah was still at an age where the kill was the most important part of the meal. Her parents did not kill if their daughter was at home for a family meal. If she was away from home for more than a week, they might. She had yet to go away without her parents, not for more than a day. One day she would move out. If she went to university, she might study in another city. Time for that choice was soon approaching, but not before lunch. For fresh meat family meals, there was a room that was soundproof, had no windows, had a drain for the hot and cold water that came out at high speed from the water gun that kept the dining room clean. The hidden dining room was so clean one could eat off the floor. When a live meal was in the room, there was nothing but a drain in the middle of the impeccably tiled floor. The scene was not really a clear picture one could properly describe. It was both compelling and revolting. The walls were easy to look at. The color was not easy to guess, but not many thought to wonder of its off-gray, some hidden mix of an elusive color. There were a few that had got hung up on it until they didn't remember what they were looking at and realized they were naked in a room that they had never been in. Bright, but no doors, no windows. "Hi, sweetie, how was your time with the Connollys?" Sarah kissed her mother. They were kind and accommodating, as was I. Even went to church with him. How was that? It was a nice speech the man gave. He reminded me of Daddy. Sarah's mother laughed. She had been to church a few times and understood the connection. "Are you hungry? I could eat a horse. You know your dad can't put a horse on that helicopter." "Okay, I'll take whatever he can get. He got you something nice. Something I can have fun with. He should last a while. I'll make him nice and tender." Sarah took her clothes off and threw them into the vestibule of her room. The vestibule was also her dressing room. Sarah went through her parents' bedroom, into their large bathroom and into the open shower. Opened the door with a palm scan of what looked like a dark green polished stone, pushed open the unseen door, then pushed it shut again. The man noticed the door closing, but was so surprised by the naked young woman suddenly standing where he might have seen a door, that he went from passive pacing in a pent-up outrage to a state of not knowing anything. Had everything in his life been an illusion? Had he always been in this room dreaming of living a life? Had something gone wrong when he woke up? Maybe he was hallucinating. He was certain he wasn't sleeping. Dreams never continued along in one closed, sterile room. He didn't expect to wake up. "Where am I?" "You are here, with me." He was aware that he was naked. He had had half a day to adjust to that. The woman, girl-woman, she was also naked. There was nothing else in the room. It was a room with a drain. There was no making sense of it without an explanation. The new visitor to the room walked about paying attention to the pattern on the floor. It appeared that she was following a path, a religious ceremony that only she knew of. This other person in the room, she seemed very wrong from many perspectives. It was odd that she hadn't cared to engage in conversation. She hadn't been surprised to see him in the room. That couldn't be right. Is this a test? He looked around for cameras. He had looked at every corner of the room already so many times. He had invented different ways of moving from one thing to inspect the next thing. Not a thing after all, to inspect, so he didn't fall into a trance and forget that he was what he was looking for. Looking to get back. He suspected it was some kind of a glitch. Something went wrong and he was snapped into a room with no doors or windows. He remembered the life he had up until the room. Just not how it went from that to this. Maybe he had been sucked into a computer game and he was in a virtual prison, naked, with a woman looking at the floor and ignoring him. This is not a test. So if it wasn't a test, then it must be a situation. Situations tended to be tests of one sort or the other. She was awful strong looking, he noticed. He was strong, but he knew she could be dangerous. That thought threw a shot of fear into him. The woman seemed to notice him then. She smiled ever so faintly and looked toward him. No longer with a smile. She studied him like he was a thing in her space. He backed away to the perimeter of the sacred floor. I shouldn't be here. I'm not even sure how I got here. I would like to find my clothes and go. Oh, where are my clothes? Who are you? Oh, what do you want? Oh, why are we naked? Sarah moved slowly, just a little, almost imperceptibly, closer toward her lunch. She was already enjoying the impact she was having on their lunch guest. He was already terrified. That was easy to see and smell. There was no need to hurry. She wanted to play. She left looking at him to go back to looking at the floor. She had looked at the floor so many times she could paint a picture from memory, if she could paint. The tiles told nothing, at least as far as Sarah knew. They were taken from a house in the south of Spain. The house had been destroyed in a fire. The floor had been auctioned off and Sarah's father liked it. The young man kept looking around for a way out. There hadn't been one since he was put into the room. He didn't remember how, but he was certain it wasn't his decision. I don't like being ignored. We are both obviously here. I need you to answer some questions. Some very basic ones would do. The question I need answered, even if no others are answered, is how do I get out? You just came in here. I should be able to leave if I feel I don't belong here. Don't you think? Sarah heard him talking, but didn't listen so much to the words. The words she had heard many times. It has to be a mistake. I'll just go. That sort of thing. Sarah listened to the pitch and the volume. The surprise of being trapped caused a rage in almost all that regained consciousness in their final room. It was best to let them ride that out on their own. Let them stew a little. They never wanted to acknowledge that it was their final resting place. That was human nature, animal nature. Evolution selected the genes that disposed the creature to survive at all cost. Sarah understood this better than those who didn't kill their food directly with bare hands and eat their hearts at life temperature. Sarah smiled. She noticed her food was getting itself prepared for tenderizing terror. Like almost all victims that started to understand that they were victims, objections became screams. Many of the individuals that had been invited explicitly to the family dining room were rapists. Sarah preferred them to all others. It was easy for her to accept her need to kill if the prey was a social outcast. Anyone taking away the right to give or deny consent had stepped well over the line of acceptable behavior. Such characters automatically went to the top of the list for consumption. No one wanted to be on an Anthropophagus list of top dining opportunities, especially if that Anthropophagus had freed you from a long jail term that you should have gotten. Sarah stopped walking about the room. She looked at a spot on the floor and waited. The victim decided on attack. He thought he could surprise a crazy occult girl, but he could have been following a script. If Sarah waited long enough, most victims decided on attack. He reasoned that if he could overpower the girl, he could hold her hostage, demand to be set free. It wasn't a well thought out plan. Sarah turned her back on her prey to encourage him. She ducked out of the way as he took a lunging swing at the back of her head and gave him a little push to throw off his balance so that he ran into a wall with his outstretched hands in his face. Fucking bitch! He came at her again and she grabbed the arm he swung, twisted it enough to break the elbow and bit into his tricep just enough to cause a little tear in the skin. He screamed. There was pain in his arm in two places. His face hurt, and there was something really wrong with the crazed beast in the room. Real terror. There was no more talking for the stranger. She had lashed out so fast that had he not had such pain, he wouldn't believe it had happened. He flailed at her and tried to kick her. Everything he did hurt. If he kicked, she kicked that leg so hard and fast he could not kick again. She punched him every time he tried to punch. Eventually she broke his other elbow. He was nearly a cripple. Sarah took a few very small bites out of him. Biting always got a strong reaction. She hit him even after he stopped attacking. She punched him everywhere, relentlessly beat like a punching bag. She sometimes licked his blood off her hands before beating him again. He was frozen in terror, not so unlike being caught in the headlights of a speeding transport truck. A brilliant moment of awareness and disbelief. I'm being methodically murdered by a heartless beast. He gave up. Too much pain, too much terror. He was still alive, but he could no longer stand up or sit up. He couldn't lie on either side because his arms didn't allow it. He ended up lying on his front with his face pressed up against the floor he had grown to know is his floor. There was an animal biting him. It was not responding to his groans for mercy. The animal seemed oblivious to his weak screams. He noticed that the biting had stopped and he was leaned up against the wall. The bloodthirsty creature put her hand on his penis. He managed to open his eyes wide and almost shake his head. The beast had turned into an angel. Maybe things would turn out. Maybe this really was a really freaky masochism fantasy he bought into. He was limp. If she was in a hurry to get somewhere, she would have just bit it off. Maybe she might have paid it no attention. When she was younger, she never thought to play with the food's penis. It was a post-pubescent curiosity. She enjoyed her final act before going for the heart. She didn't think of it sexually. It amused her what could be done with a penis. She could calm and steady a victim so that it slowly abandoned its state of terror. She caressed his genitalia slowly like she might pat a sleeping cat. Careful not to use her teeth at all, she took him slowly and gently into her mouth. Evolution had pretty much written that after that, not much mattered. When he finally ejaculated, he was near to death. His brain felt the removal of his penis, but didn't understand it as a great change to the hopeless situation. That bit of pleasure was the only thing he wanted to hold to amongst the pain. Sarah looked up at him quickly to see the faint smile on his face, then went back to take a bite from inside of one of his legs before standing up above the family meal.